Okay, on the phone call on Skype right now in the middle of this pandemic where all of us have to shelter in place, wash your hands, wear your mask when you go out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have our Shawn McBride, one of my favorite people to talk to because, again, you can practice law in many different regions of America. There's
Yes.
new cultures they have different perspectives on the law. The laws change. I'm constantly telling people that culture isn't just a fun thing to study. It has applications in the law.
Yep.
You look at the laws in Louisiana, they're different than in California. And you can go back hundreds of years and go, well, why did they put that in place? Because they see
Yep.
the world differently.
Yep.
So, and there is some allowance for that, but there's
Yes.
also some hard walls, I would imagine. And so I asked Shawn, if our Shawn McBride, lawyer, if he would be willing to come on and talk about Huntington Beach.
Yes.
So, do you want to introduce the subject? Do you want me to do?
Sure. Yes. So, I mean, I think maybe you want to give just a general factual background, and then we can jump into a little bit of the analysis of kind of what's going on because we've got a couple layers of things as usual.
Yeah. Um, so my understanding, and this is why I wanted to talk to you, and I'm
Yep.
asking people as well. I don't fully understand what's going on at all, new
Yep.
situations, but as I gather, last weekend there was a protest in California, or recently, last couple days.
Yep.
A bunch of people came out to Huntington Beach, California, and they hung out on the beach. And basically, they were unharassed or unmolested by any city officials or anybody, and it looked like they had a great time. And then it was all over the television camera. Uh, Californians, revolting against the governor, and they all want to have the economy open. But the thing that grabbed me was it was just Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't suddenly this beach and that beach and this beach. It was just Huntington Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to people who were in LA remotely, they were like, look at the people on the beach. They were very, very pale. They were not typically beachgoers. And
Mm-hmm.
the newspaper reported about buses bringing people in from around LA to Huntington Beach to do this. So
Yes.
I'm being told by health officials people can die from this disease, shelter in place. I decide, hey, I want to go hang out with a bunch of people, maybe cough on each other, and then take it back home and expose people who are sheltering in place. Is that cool or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we got a couple layers of things going on here as usual, right? So I think, you know, you have the local orders, to stay at home, essential activities, basically shelter in place and not leave. The other thing we have going on here, and there's a lot of talk about it, is people's First Amendment rights. So when the U.S. Constitution was adopted, there's an amendment, the First Amendment, and basically it says, and it's interesting in the wording, but it says Congress cannot pass a law that you know restricts people's right to peaceably assemble, right? And that kind of was one of the things the founding fathers wanted. They wanted people to be able to get together and talk about problems, right? They didn't want the government to ever break us up because there was a concern that if you broke everybody up, then you could never throw over the government, right? You could never get together and have civil discussion and change laws, right? Because if the government was suddenly able to put everybody in their corner and not talk to each other, you'd have a problem with changing the laws and having communication. So we've got kind of the First Amendment battling the local ordinances. And when you look at the U.S. Supreme Court cases on these fundamental rights, and there's a handful of fundamental rights: religion, peaceful assembly, free speech, being able to express your opinion.
Yeah.
Court says do it in the least restrictive manner possible, basically, if you really boil down through it. I mean, that's a shorthand way of saying it, right? But um, so what we have in battle here is we have the California law says stay at home, don't assemble, don't pass this virus around, local public health law versus this free speech right. And so we got the two fighting each other right now.
It's fair.
But this U.S. Supreme Court has allowed restrictions on the free speech right, right? They've allowed people to have to get a permit, right? You can't just have a mass assembly wherever you want, right? I mean, the government can't deny the permit based on what you're going to talk about, but if you're going to assemble over a certain number of people, U.S. Supreme Court has said, okay, well, you can require a permit, right? The government has to issue the permit regardless of what you want to talk about. And there was a famous case, U.S. Supreme Court case, where somebody wanted to do a KKK rally, and they had to give them the permit to do the KKK rally, right? You can't say you can speak about this, but you can't speak about that.
Right.
But there has been some restrictions on this free assembly because obviously, it can cause dangerous situations. And here you see it, right? I mean, we're talking about a virus that can obviously easily pass between people. So that's what we have at tension, right? And this is one of the ones where I personally think it's a pretty close call, right? I mean, people do need to be able, and you can assemble online nowadays too, right? We have technology, right? People could do a mass Zoom meeting or, go to webinar, and they could all complain about what's going on, and they could all say, we're going to vote these people out, or we're going to, send letters to our Congress people or whatever. So you could assemble online now. That's a new technology we have in the last couple decades where this is really practical.
Okay.
So there are alternate ways to assemble, but the real question is your right to assemble versus the government's right to protect people's health. And the two of them really are battling right here in this particular case.
I understand the right to assemble and free speech, and I love those things, and I think they are pivotal to Western order and understanding,
sure.
etc. At the same time, I'm one of the people that's not exactly happy about the coronavirus lockdown. A lot of my friends and family love it. They have easily converted to telecommuting, etc. So I don't want to act like I think it's great, but I do what they say because it seems like these doctors are telling the truth, and this really could get a lot of people hurt or killed. So I'm not trying to come off as I love it and I'm a pro this or that. I'm not. I hate it. I love going to the gym, but I'm doing what I'm being told because I think people's lives are in jeopardy.
Right.
And then I see a bunch of people who congregate from LA, go to one place, spread the disease conceivably, and then take it back to the isolated communities, effectively undoing all of this work.
Right.
If they get someone killed, grandma, we know, was exposed at this date after someone went to X beach, and theoretically they can prove it. What happens then?
Yeah, that's an open issue. So there is a California statute on communicating disease, and it's largely geared, near as I can figure, to people that are passing on STDs and that type of thing. And it basically says, hey, if you knowingly infect somebody, we can hold you criminally liable, right? So that's already on the books in California. The problem with that statute is it's a 4-part test, and part of that test is you have to knowingly endanger the other person, right? So there's a real question with COVID-19. Even in New York City, they did the one test and they said 21% of the people have it, right? So, or had the antibodies. So 21% of people in some part of Manhattan had the disease. So that means even there, 80% of the people, 79% of people hadn't had it. So there's going to be a real hurdle on that criminal liability to say, hey, you knew you had it. You knew you were passing it on. Are you doing a reckless activity? That becomes another question, right? Is it negligence, right? So we have our general tort law out there. So now we're moving out of criminal into civil, right? Do you have to pay somebody money?
I just want to say 1 second. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'm going to restart a new